Hello and welcome to the channel. If this is your first time, my name is Conor McMillen. I'm an IFS-trained life coach and I've been doing this work for over 10 years. I absolutely love it and I'm here with a passion to help people just like yourself learn how to implement IFS techniques and other forms of modality such that you can become your own therapist, that you can be self-led on your journey for self-healing and self-growth. So that's what this channel is all about. We do have a focus on IFS, but it's not the only thing that we cover here. Today we are going to talk about polarities, and we're also going to talk about the most common part that I've ever seen in human beings. This is just across the board, the most common part that I've seen, and how that part shows up, particularly in polarities. So first of all, what is a polarity? A polarity is just a setup between two parts of our system that have opposing or opposite desires, needs, preferences. And based on those things, they probably have a different, possibly polarizing operating system, a way that they orient to the external world or to your internal world. But they have a different operating system, and that's based on the experience that they're holding. So their memories from this part are going to be different than the memories of this part, and that's what shapes their operating system, how they act, think, behave, feel. So this is a incredibly common setup that creates a lot of stress and challenge for us as human beings with this beautiful and complex system, is when we have parts that want different things. And we have trouble wrapping our head around that, I think. How can we have two desires or two needs that are opposite from one another? How is that possible? Well, it's very possible and a lot easier to understand if we take on the IFS perspective, which is we are a multiplicity-based system. We're not just one singular functioning, thinking, moving, acting system. We have many different parts inside of us that have different desires and needs and act and think and feel very differently. And at the center, we have a place that we call self, which is calm, curious, compassionate, and it considers with respect the needs, the desires, the perspective of all parts in our system. So this is part of the journey in IFS. It's a huge part of what we promote here on this channel, is getting in touch with that place of self, building a relationship with that place, learning when you're in it and when you're not, and learning how to get back to it, right? So just strengthening our muscle of returning to self, huge piece of work. For the purposes of this video, we're looking at what happens when we find ourselves in a polarization. So very simple polarization can be someone calls you up and asks you to go to the movies and you say a part of me wants to do that and a part of me wants to stay home. That's not necessarily a challenging or a painful polarization, but it is a polarization in that there's an opposite need here. One wants to go out to the movies, one wants to stay home. But it's unlikely that you're going to have a lot of stress around that. It's possible, but there can be much more intense polarizations. For example, I want to lose weight because I want to feel healthy, and don't you dare mess with my food. Don't you dare make me go to the gym. I am not doing that. You can see that's kind of an intense polarization. And when we have polarizations that feel like that, then we have a lot of stress inside. Part of the reason is that we have activated another part. And this is the part that I have seen as the most common, kind of across the board. Pretty much everyone's got a part that you could name something like this part. And I like to call this part the figure it out part. So when we have a polarization, we tend to activate a third part that's trying to figure out who is right. Who do we pay attention to? And so this part is doing a lot of work. Tends to be kind of up here in the brain space. It's very analytical. It's trying to do a lot of research and define. It's trying to collect a lot of data and information and make a decision based on what it understands about these two different parts. And most of the time, figure it out parts aren't necessarily decisive in their action. They tend to be caught in the figuring it out process. And in my mind, this produces a lack of clarity, not just for the figure it out part or for these two parts that are in polarization, but for your whole system. So there's a lack of clarity and there's a lot of energy going to trying to figure it out. And you have two parts that might be kind of at each other a bit. I need this thing, well, I need this thing. So just imagine how much energy is being taken up with that dynamic. And what is needed most of all is for you, from your calm, curious, and compassionate self, to step in and start kind of making some decisions. So from this place of self, the first thing you're going to want to do is just tune into your body, your physical body, tune into your emotional world, and tune into the thoughts that are playing around in your head, and just notice for a little while what's happening. And from a very gentle, calm, curious, and compassionate place, just kind of acknowledge it. Be like, okay, I feel that. I feel that, I see that, I hear that, okay, I'm hearing that one, I got that one, okay, yeah. And you can even start writing some of this stuff down. So the initial process is simply taking a moment to pause and be with the experience that's happening right now, and then starting to shape the parts that are at play here. And I'm proposing that if you have a polarization, most likely there's kind of three different camps here. But one side of the polarization could have more than one part. And maybe you don't have a figure it out part activated right then. But I'm kind of giving you the most general setup so that the most people can benefit from this video, while keeping in mind that it's going to be very highly specific to you as an individual. But in general, we're kind of looking to understand, what is this part? What is this part? And is the figure it out part activated? And if we can have in our mind and sort of track that, or write down on a piece of paper, my X part is here, my Y part is here, and my figure it out part is up here. Then we immediately bring more self into the room by creating a little bit of separation from those parts and kind of holding those parts out here in a more observational place rather than just a feeling it place. The next step in the process with a polarization is helping the figure it out part relax. So we're turning our attention to the figure it out part. We're acknowledging it. If it feels true for us, we're thanking it. We're sending gratitude to that part for the work that it's been doing. And we're asking, would you like to kind of just relax for a little bit? I'd like to spend some time with these other parts and kind of hear from them directly. I'm noticing that you're here, looks like you're doing a lot of work. I'm here now. I wonder if you would be okay with just kind of pulling back a little bit, and you're welcome to stay and observe, but maybe giving me a little space to do my thing. And see what happens. Most of the time, that part is willing to relax. And if it's not willing to relax, it simply means that you need to bring curiosity to that part, to ask more questions and to be with it a bit longer. If and when that part does relax, then it is time to turn attention to one of those two parts or camps of parts that are activated. And you can do this by simply noticing what side is kind of louder or needs more attention intuitively. You can generally kind of feel that out. If it is the case where both seem to be pretty alive and could both use equal attention, you can just let them both know, hey, I'd like to spend time with both of you. And how would you feel if I spent time with you first? With a little kind of like promise, guarantee, commitment that I'm also gonna give you time. Would you mind giving me a little bit of space so that I can just hear from this part? Once I finish here, I'll spend time and give you attention after that. And most of the time, that's gonna be okay. If for some reason this part is saying, no, that's not okay, then you can try it the other way around. At some point, you will find a way in to be able to separate these parts. With enough curiosity, with enough relaxation, with enough invitation for relaxation, one of those two parts is going to pull back and give you the space to work with the other part. So once you've been able to kind of isolate, I'm gonna work with this part, then you're simply bringing curiosity and acknowledgement. And you're saying, hey, I heard you say you do or don't want this thing. Can you tell me more about that? What are you feeling right now? Why do you feel that way? Help me understand you better. What's the message that you have for me today? What is your job? What are you protecting? These are the types of questions that can elicit a deep and loving relationship with that part. Remember, all of our parts, they need to be heard. They need to be understood, and ultimately they need to be loved. And it's pretty hard for us as human beings to love something that we don't understand. So initiating this conversation based in genuine curiosity so that you can better understand these parts and then naturally bring your compassion and your love to them. I mean, that's the name of the game right there. That's 99% of your IFS journey and your IFS work. It's going to be finding genuine and authentic compassion and love for your parts. So bringing curiosity, asking questions, acknowledging their answers. If it makes sense to you, saying that makes sense to you. If it doesn't make sense to you, ask the questions that will elicit the responses you need for it to make sense. And acknowledge, 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 bring compassion, bring love. Once you feel complete, or that part feels complete, you kind of get a sense like, okay, we're on the same page, I'm hearing you, I'm really feeling you, this really makes sense. Then you can let that part know, hey, I'm really understanding you, I'm feeling you, it's making sense. How would you feel now if I turn my attention to this other part? Most of the time, once this part has received a certain level of recognition, it will have no problem letting you do work with other parts of your system. So assuming that's the case, you let that part rest, you turn to this other part, and you do the same thing. Keep in mind, this process here has nothing to do with figuring out what the next step is. The end result should not be, I'm gonna make a decision based on what I hear from these parts. It should really be based in, I just wanna get to know these parts, and I wanna help these parts relax if they're willing and if they're able. That's what I wanna do here. And it's my belief, and I think it's built into the IFS process, that if we focus on that, rather than outcome, if we focus on the feeling of generating understanding and compassion for our parts, then we can more naturally make decisions, take actions, feel feelings, process difficult things, go through challenges in a much healthier and grounded way, because we're connected with self and our parts trust us. And I also want to acknowledge that sometimes we have to make decisions. It's very important, and they might be time sensitive. So obviously do your best with what you can in those moments, but try to do it from a place of self rather than from an activated part, and certainly outside of an activated polarization as best as you can. And if you can't do that, it's okay. Simply acknowledging and being aware, I've got some parts up right now. That's awesome. That's huge work. That protocol I went through, you don't have to match that exactly to have some kind of like, you did IFS right. I really want to let you know that just by practicing and having this stuff in your mind and trying things out, you're doing it. It doesn't have to look a certain way. So getting back to the process and kind of wrapping this up, once you've been able to help the figure it out part relax, give you space to work with these parts, you've taken time with this part or this camp of parts, they feel acknowledged and seen, you've done that with this one, then it's simply time to find gratitude for all three and let them know that you really appreciate that they're willing to show up and do this work with you. And then you can set an intention. And I really encourage you to do this if it feels true. So intentions are commitments that we're making to our parts. We're making them to our system. We're saying something like, this was great. I really appreciate the time that I got with each of you. And I would like to set the intention to come back at another time and have more conversation and get to know you better. How would you like that? Are you willing to meet me there? And most of the time, that is music to the ears of our parts. They generally love to hear that. And the trickiest thing is going to simply be keeping your commitment. I would really encourage you, if you do make a commitment, really try to stick to it. Really, really, really try. Because that directly relates to self-trust and how much your parts can actually trust you. And finally, to close it out with your parts, I always just like to check, does anyone need anything else before I transition or before we transition into a different space? Anybody need anything else? And just give it a minute to see if anyone's still feeling like they need to be heard. Generally, that's all it is some, a part just needs a couple more sentences to share something and to be acknowledged most of the time. So next time you encounter your system in this stressed, lack of clarity, trying to figure it out place, try to take a moment, come back to this video and play it out and see if it feels true for you. Is there a part over here? Oh, and a part over here, and a part up here? Then you have a polarization with a figure it out part, and you kind of know some stuff that you can try out. If you found this video helpful, obviously subscribe to the channel. We've got, at this point, a couple of videos a month coming out. You can like the video, you can leave a comment. All that stuff is really helpful for us to get more seen on YouTube. But if this work is feeling like, ugh, this is my jam, I want more, then head over to our website, internalfamilysystems.org. We've got a few different programs that we offer over there, and we are expanding. So keep paying attention to that website, keep coming back to these videos, and keep finding more of yourself. Take care. Thanks for joining me. I'll talk to you soon.